Major breaking news tonight as we come on the air. A regional passenger jet and an Army helicopter collide, crashing into the Potomac River. This is a live look at the large emergency presence on scene. Let's pull that up. You see it right there. New shocking video also appears to show the moment that the collision happens. The plane starting to land when it disappears behind what looks like a fireball. Right now, new details are trickling in, but here is what we know so far. Reagan Airport is shut down, the FAA issuing a ground stop. We know DC fireboats are part of this massive rescue response that's happening as we speak. 60 passengers and 4 crew members were on board this plane. That is new information I want to highlight. If you've been with us for the last hour, we're getting the first information about the number of people who were on board. We know 3 military members were on board the helicopter. That also is new within the hour. Senator Ted Cruz, who chairs the Science and Transportation Committee, releasing a statement weighing in tonight, quote, "While we don't yet know how many on board were lost, we know there are fatalities." And we just got a statement from President Trump. He says, quote, "I have been fully briefed on the terrible accident which just took place at Reagan National Airport. May God bless their souls. Thank you for the incredible work being done by our first responders. I am monitoring the situation and will provide more details as they arise." I'm also hearing from my source from the FAA that the new transportation secretary is also reporting to the FAA headquarters to be a part of this investigation. What a way to step into a new role with a big plane crash just like this one. Well, folks, thanks for staying with us. We have live team coverage. We want to start off with Josh Chapin. He is right near that runway. Josh? All right, we want to move on. We have an issue with Josh's mic. Let's go to our Carl Willis.
Yes, Michelle, we are in Terminal 1 here at Reagan National Airport, a quiet corner of the terminal. That is likely by design because this is where we are hoping to get updates throughout the night. The Mayor, Muriel Browser, just tweeting that she has been briefed on all of this. Her prayers go out and hopes to update us pretty soon here. Now, Reagan National Airport, this is where all landings and takeoffs have been halted for the night as this investigation happens. Reagan National asking media to come here for these briefings. But again, the big issue that's going on tonight, the big story, is what's happening right across the way here. You can see the fire vehicles in the distance. We're going to continue to update you throughout the night. Michelle.
I'm going to jump in here. Sorry to cut you short, but we do have a news conference that's happening in Wichita, Kansas. Now, remember, that is where this flight departed from. Let's listen into what's being discussed there.
It's Eisenhower National Airport, and it just breaks our heart to hear something like this occur. And so it's devastating for everyone.
This route is a fairly new route, the direct flights to D.C., correct?
That's correct. The direct flights to DCA started a year ago, so January 8th of last year. And I wish I had more information, but if we have additional, we will be reaching out to everyone. So.
Will that be communicated via email or here, or what's the plan?
We'll do our best to get you the information as soon as we can. So whatever is appropriate for us, whichever medium. I wish I could tell you exactly or schedule time to come in, but that information is going to trickle to us. So I don't know yet, but we will share as much and as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So right there, you're hearing the tail end of what was a quick update, it seems, from the airport official spokesperson there in Wichita, Kansas. What I heard in the back end of that as they were wrapping was that this was a new route that they started as of January of last year. So they'd been doing it roughly a year, Wichita to DCA. Not sure that is a significant factor in what happened here, but that is some new information that we're just getting. We want to go to our Josh Chapin. He is standing by. He's been on the scene there at a distance because it's quite hard to get any closer than where you are. But what are you seeing right now, Josh?
Well, Michelle, it is just quite a night. I've been getting text messages from just about everyone around the country asking what was going on, what's happening, trying to answer them as best I could and help you guys sort of digest this. Yeah, this is about as close as we could get. Gravelly Point, this is a spot where we know so many of you come to watch the airplanes come in and land, a beautiful spot to do that here, to watch the planes land at Reagan National Airport. This is now a spot initially about an hour ago is where a number, like dozens of emergency crews and fire trucks were staging. We saw boats here, but now if my photographer Isa can go in and show you what's going on over there. It is a staging area, and we don't exactly know why, Michelle. We're trying to figure this out, but there are 3-4 Metro buses that have been parked here. We don't know if these are potentially warming buses for the folks who have gone, the divers maybe, who have gone into the water and need a spot to get warm. We don't know if this is a spot where potentially any survivors will be coming. It is just hard to know, but that is the newest piece of information that I've seen across the street. There are a number of different police cars and different other uniformed personnel that are there, and then those buses, again, the buses that have been put here by Metro, and we're trying to figure out exactly what that is. But we have been around the district tonight, watching the lights and the sirens all over. We went down to the Navy Yard to try and get a vantage point over there. But again, we're trying to figure out exactly what is going on over here. Gravelly Point, one of the staging areas for the DC Fire, EMS, Metro Police, and now these Metro buses. We'll keep you posted throughout the night. Michelle? All
right, good stuff there, Josh. Thank you. We do know that those buses that you mentioned, they are there as a warming station. So if people are pulled from the water, they can go inside those buses. WMATA putting out a statement earlier today saying they were sending those buses to support this rescue mission that is happening. They're also letting us know that they're working to assist Dulles Airport with diverted flights, some flights possibly landing there instead of DCA because of the ground stop. And they're also running extra Silver Line trains to keep also the Silver Line open later for folks who perhaps are using Metro to get home. We also have some new information. This is just coming in. That ground stop is going to extend until 5 in the morning. That is the latest word that we are getting on that ground stop. So if perhaps you had a flight for tomorrow, know that if it was an early morning flight, you'll want to check the status of it. And this just into our newsroom, we have the dispatch calls made moments after this crash. Let's take a listen.
I was reporting a CRJ and a helicopter crash into the Potomac River.
Officer advised there's a helicopter in the water. Been found by boats retrieving injured. They're looking for the aircraft at this moment.
So those are the first audio sounds that we are hearing in response to this tragedy that has unfolded in the Potomac River. We know the black box will be critical. It's often called the black box, but it's actually a bright orange color. But a flight data recorder is going to be key because that is what holds a lot of the electronic data that can reveal to investigators after the fact what was happening, what the measurements of certain tools were showing moments before this impact happened. We want to check in again with our Natalie Spalla. She is live for us, along with Steve Rudin. They are both at Dangerfield Park. What are you guys seeing from where you are?
Yeah, Michelle, well, we can truly just offer perspective at this point, what the scene looks like here at Dangerfield. And I can say it is pretty packed in terms of a lot of the people who have been parking, kind of rotating the parking lot, trying to find parking spots and just trying to get a sense of what this scene is right now. And I can say it's a little eerie. I used that word earlier, and that's because there's no emergency vehicles, no sirens, no lights over here. It's just people wanting to get a sense of what's going on right now. So a lot of people with their phones, with their cameras, a lot of camera crews like ours here tonight, again, looking out across the Potomac to see the sirens on the other side. But yes, very quiet. Steve, you were one of the first people here, actually. You live close by.
I live in Old Town, and it was regular evening. Yep. And then all of a sudden I heard a lot of choppers, and then at that point a lot of fire trucks. So the search and rescue effort is expansive. Old Town, Alexandria, Arlington, across the river in the district, Prince George's County. What's interesting is that we hear the helicopters that are behind us. There are 3 that are circling. And to show you just how big this search and rescue effort is, this chopper, one of them that I'm looking at right right now is from the Maryland Natural Resources Police, and they're based out of the Eastern Shore in Eastern Virginia, Maryland. So they've traveled all the way across the bay to get over here, along with Park Police. They have a chopper up, also a chopper from Prince George's County. All this information from Flight Radar 24, a fantastic tool to show you just how they've been circling around dozens and dozens of times as you look. And I don't know if we can get this here. I'm going to try to pull up one of these planes here just to show you just how much they've been circling, how many times. My phone doesn't want to cooperate with me on this one, but I can assure you, I mean, the search and rescue effort is something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And we mentioned the ground stop that's at Reagan National Airport. It's going to stay until 5 p.m. A lot of flights have also been diverted over to Dulles International Airport, to BWI Marshall. And this airport, generally, the flights end at around 11:30. You might find a later flight that comes in, because I can hear them often when they're landing down the river because of noise abatement. But the search crew continues. I just want to show you, we'll step out of the way here. I'm going to step right over here. I'll grab this. And Marco, if you could just show, there's actually like 3 distinct areas where they're doing all the searching right now, and Natalie can also see this also. If you look over toward one end, that's where you have a lot of search and rescue. I don't know if that's in the water or not, and then as you head closer to Reagan National Airport, you can see the U.S. Capitol Dome in the background. So Natalie, I will step in here again.
It's scattered up all across the river, and you can understand why it's a little bit different over on this side as opposed to what's going on behind us, just because the lights, none of that is here, none of the noise is here, just that buzzing that is truly what we're hearing.
One other note that, earlier today we had wind advisories for the area with wind gusts upwards of 30-40 miles per hour. That advisory is down, and there's a little bit of a breeze here right now, so that's definitely going to help aid with the search and rescue. However, the water temperatures, as Veronica's been saying, they're only in the 30s. I mean, not freezing. Part of the river had a layer of ice on it up until a couple of days ago. Today, we had a high temperature that was well above 60 degrees, but that doesn't really help with the water temperature.
Just an awful way to end a day where a lot of us were happy about the warmer temperatures that we haven't seen here in quite some time. Michelle, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
You guys point out something that is so key to all of this, the water temperatures, and VJ has been looking at this. VJ, you have some new perspective on how that water temperature really affects the body in just a quick amount of time.
That's right, yeah. So I was just looking, just the science here. Water transfers heat away from your body 25 times faster than air. That's 25 times faster than air that water carries that heat away. I started out looking at 9 o'clock this evening, shortly thereafter when the incident happened. 35 degrees, the water temperature for the Potomac, 35 degrees and holding right now. So let's get some perspective. So right here, this little tip, that's Haynes Point, that's Reagan National. Here's the runway that we were talking about, potentially where that craft was about ready to land. But right there, the blue spot, that's the water. This is the whole area just around Haynes Point where the rescue effort is taking place. Again, 35 degrees, that water temperature. So these are just the facts in terms of hypothermia, what happens to the human body. It takes less than 3 minutes to start losing dexterity, where your limbs start to slow down and its movement, and that is with no protective clothing, which is likely what the folks on the plane, you doubt that anyone really had any time to put on anything significant. Unconsciousness in 30 minutes, and unfortunately 90 minutes situation not looking good.
All right, VJ, thank you. I'm just seeing some new reporting that we have not independently confirmed this just yet, but reporting that the military Black Hawk helicopter has been located upside down in the river. John Rogers is at the alert desk tracking a lot of reaction that is coming in. Governor Wes Moore weighing in. Who else are you seeing remarks from?
Oh, a lot of remarks, Michelle. And also to point out, we also did learn that that chopper came from Fort Belvoir, was carrying 3 passengers. That's what the Army is reporting. We are seeing images, more images coming in of the collision. You can see that flash right there. This is what's being shared all throughout social media. This is one image from the Kennedy Center, where in just a moment you're going to see right there the glowing flash. Very frightening and terrifying to see these images. You'd mentioned that we're hearing from lawmakers I want to go to some of that reaction right now. Governor Westmore, as you had mentioned, said he's disheartened to hear about this. He's raised its emergency operations center to enhanced. They've deployed divers to the scene to assist. Maryland DNR police are also on scene. Mark Warner, I'm closely monitoring the situation. My thoughts are with all the victims and first responders as they address this concerning and tragic incident. And Tim Kaine also said, I'm praying for all involved. One thing to point out here, just last year, these two senators from Virginia were very concerned about air traffic at Reagan National because there were efforts to increase the number of flights there. They were worried about this being one of the busiest airports in the country, and sadly, they were concerned about situations like what we're seeing here tonight. Don Beyer, Congressman, he's saying that he's in touch with airport officials. This is obviously very worrying. I urge the community to please let first responders do their jobs and save lives. And then also Senator Jerry Moran from Kansas, learning about the plane inbound from Kansas involved here. Please join me in praying for all involved. And we're just seeing even more, we're seeing videos from people. This is something that's very chilling that people are sharing, where they're showing the flight path of the plane, and then as it goes over the Potomac, you just see the flight path simply stop. A very chilling scene there, Michelle, and we're still collecting a lot of reactions from people, even in the air, that were rerouted from this. I'm going to collect that, and I'll share that with you soon. Yeah, we can't forget the human element to all of this. You and I mean, everyone knows the feeling of waiting for a loved one, right, John? To land at the airport and to have news like this, you know, come up on your phone while you're waiting. I just can't imagine the anxiety that those folks are feeling. John Rogers for us, thank you. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but we want to let folks know what to anticipate. John, thank you. We know that the FAA and the NTSB will be leading this investigation. And I just want to point out that there are two types of flight recording devices. Of course, you have the flight data recorder. That preserves the recent history of the flight through the recordings of several different, dozens in fact, of parameters that it tracks per second as that flight is in motion. And then you also have the cockpit voice recorder. Those two pieces of equipment, sometimes they're combined as one, but that device is going to be critical in figuring out what was happening on board that plane in the moments that led up to this point of impact, that crash. We don't know in terms of the helicopter. I'm not sure of the capabilities of that in terms of voice data recordings. Our Dave Lucas is standing by. Dave, do you know what kind of recording devices might be on the chopper that may lend some insight into what happened as investigators try to gather all of the evidence and figure out how something like this could happen?
I don't know about the Black Hawk. There are some rotor wing helicopter aircraft that do have cockpit voice recorders. It's the flight data recorder, though, that will be the real value here. But to be able to hear the voices between the cockpit of the smaller of the regional jet and Reagan National will be invaluable too, if there was any warning to be heard or had about the helicopter that was close by. I want to amplify on something that John was talking about just a minute ago, and there is no question that moving forward, after we get beyond just the horrible notion of what has happened tonight there in the Potomac, this crash is almost certain to renew debate over safety at Reagan National, because last year, turns out as part of legislation to fund the FAA, Congress added 5 additional round-trip flights, and the decision came over the objection of the D.C. area congressional delegation, and that delegation has long argued that the airport is at capacity and adding more flights could compromise its ability to operate safely. Now, again, remembering this was a flight that was landing. We heard earlier from that news conference, it's been about a year or so that this flight has been operating between Kansas and there at DCA. But you always are sharing that airspace with other aircraft. In this case, it was that Black Hawk that had taken off from Fort Belvoir, and the two apparently collided. One thing that I think is important here, and you've been talking about the river itself, is also probably useful to know the depth of the river, and it varies between about 15 and 30 feet where the dredge channel is located. It can be as deep as 80 feet in some places, but that tends to be a little bit farther on the other side of the bridges there. But we're talking about enough water and water that is, in the best of times, got lots of stuff floating in it and on it. This is a long river that flows by a number of forests and wooded areas. You pick up that kind of flotsam and jetsam in the water and a lot of other stuff, and then it starts flowing through an urban area. You get that kind of stuff too. So there's lots to digest here, and we will be doing that over the long period of time. Right now, we're just in that horrible period where we're coming to grips with what is definitely a mass casualty tragedy.
You're right about that. And as you were speaking, Dave, I pulled up a remark, a quote from those senators. You were talking about the conversation that's likely to evolve about the amount of traffic and volume at DCA. And I was able to dig into our archives here and find a statement from Senators Warner and Kane. And they said, as the House and Senate work toward a final FAA reauthorization bill, we urge you to reject any proposal to add additional flights at an overburdened DCA, which would negatively impact service and increase delays and cancellations for all passengers. At this point, we don't know that any of that would have made a difference in this case, but you're right, that debate is likely to come up once again, given our very busy airspace. Dave, thank you so much for that.
Yes.
And really quickly, we've been talking a lot about these different aircraft that were involved. We want to show you what they look like. You can see on your screen right now, on the left is a Black Hawk helicopter, and on the right is what a PSA American Eagles plane looks like, which we understand had about 60 passengers on board. Now to our Carl Willis. He is standing by. He is at Reagan National Airport. He's been there for hours now. We're waiting on this NTSB FAA news conference to start. Does it look like it's any closer? My hunch is no, because you just stepped out of the room and you're in the terminal.
No, that press conference will happen in this terminal, hopefully right here behind me, and an update since the last time I spoke with you. We're told that newser should happen at 11:30. So in just a few minutes here, I can tell you that we are in a quiet corner of this terminal, and that's likely by design to keep us away from, as you mentioned, that human element, people who are awaiting their loved ones who possibly are coming here for answers. We will be away from them as we get briefed by some of the officials who are over this rescue mission. And take a look here behind me. This has changed in just the last few minutes. This has been flashing intermittently, but it is now permanently up on the flight boards here. Reads, due to an emergency situation, all flights are being held on the airfield. Additional information will be available as it is received. For customers on departing flights, please check with your airline representative, and that goes for if you have a flight in the morning. And since we talked to you last, we've also been told that ground stop here for landing and departing flights, that is going to be in place until 5 a.m. So something to keep in mind here. I've been looking on FlightAware throughout the night. So far, there are 7 cancellations and 19 delays. So again, that is likely going to continue on throughout the morning. But once again, we're expecting that update by 11:30 tonight. We'll be standing by and bring that live to you once that happens. Michelle.
Carl, I know you mentioned that ground stop is until 5 a.m., but is there a possibility that that could be extended as well, because there's just so much to this investigation?
That is highly likely, Michelle. Just the scope of this investigation, the fact that there are still fire boats and EMS and police standing by and being involved in that recovery mission and that rescue mission right now. So, you definitely want to call in ahead. And if you have loved ones who are coming into town, let them know as well that this ground stop is happening again until 5 a.m. at the very least, Michelle.
And we're seeing some reporting that some of these flights that were supposed to land at DCA have been diverted to Dulles. What more can you tell us about that effort?
Yeah, that is the good thing about having two other airports that can handle this kind of aircraft in the area, that they can be diverted, and that's nothing but a Uber ride or a little bit farther for your loved ones to go to pick you up. So that has been happening. I can also tell you, just, this is D.C., of course, so you can imagine the people who were landing, who were supposed to land before and after. I saw a tweet earlier tonight, or a post on X rather, that Representative Eric Swalwell of California landed at 8:42, just minutes before this crash happened. So in the coming days, we'll learn more about just who witnessed and who was in the vicinity when this tragedy happened. Michelle.
Okay, Carl, thank you so much. And as soon as that news conference starts, we will get back to you. Thank you. On the phone now is our Tom Rousey. Tom, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You cover transportation so well for us all the time. I would imagine something like this is causing tremendous backups for folks who are navigating in the Alexandria area. What are you seeing, and what kind of workarounds can you recommend?
They said they wanted me to come on and talk a little bit about some of my coverage in the past for how busy DCA is, Michelle.
Okay, we can start there as well, because that's something I was discussing with John Rogers, Dave Lucas, and the push to dial back some of the volume that we've seen at that airport. Both senators from Virginia were very outspoken last year about that issue when it came up.
That's right. Last year, the Congress overall approved adding some long-distance flights to the airport, and there were some opponents, among them the airport's authority itself. And one of several arguments that they gave was that it's already so busy that to add more flights could potentially, create a safety risk. Now, that adding to the flights, as far as I know, had absolutely nothing to do with what happened tonight. However, one of the things they argued was that it's such a busy airport. And of course, Reagan National, it's unique because, unlike Dulles, which has 4 runways, Reagan technically has 3, but it really only has one main runway, and then it has 2 smaller ones that crisscross the main runway. So it does all this volume, but it can only use one runway at a time because they all cross each other. And in fact, the flight tonight was going to land on one of the smaller of the 2 runways. It's called runway 33. So it was headed, instead of like a straight, almost north-south landing on the main runway, it was heading across the Potomac, I guess kind of almost northwest, to land on what's called runway 33, which again is one of the 2 smaller ones there. Smaller planes land on that runway all the time, so there's nothing unusual about that. Obviously, there should not have been a helicopter in the way. But again, it is a very busy airport, especially when you consider how few runways it has and the fact that it can only use one of them at a time. And in fact, the main runway, which again was not the one this plane was headed towards, is considered the busiest commercial runway in the entire country because Reagan National does so much with so little overall acreage on the ground, Michelle.
Yeah, you're right. As you're speaking, I know you're not near a TV right now, possibly, but Tom, we're showing just the length of the runway. That's a factor also for flights and pilots that are landing there. Again, we don't know what played a role in this particular crash, but we're just sharing with our viewers what we know about this airport, some of the challenges that it has a history of. And as you referenced, that runway really is one of the busiest runways in the country because, as you said, it really comes down to just one runway.
Yeah, you can only use one at a time because they all crisscross each other. And I used to live within sight of Reagan National Airport and its runways. And if you've ever just, been able to watch it from kind of up high all day long, it is one plane after another, either taking off or landing, and there are very few breaks. It's so busy. And so again, when they, had this controversy over adding more flights last year, ultimately they approved adding 5 more round trip flights a day. So it's not a major change. But again, one of the things they said was this is already such a busy airport. And at the time, I think the big concern was that, air traffic control might clear 2 planes to be in the same spot at the same time. And there have been some near misses where, one plane on one runway that crisscrosses the main one and one on the main one have had incidents where they came, way too close to potentially having a collision. It hasn't happened, but that was the main concern, was the idea that two planes might be in the same place at the same time. On nobody's radar screen was the possibility of a plane hitting a military helicopter or anything like that at the time. But again, the argument was, this is so busy, it just creates potentially more opportunities for accidents.
Yeah, and speaking of, we know that air traffic control nationwide are understaffed. And we don't know that that was a factor in this, but there are going to be questions that are likely to come up in this news conference that was supposed to start at 11:30, but it looks like it's going to be a little bit later than that. But there will likely be questions about how air traffic control was involved in this. Did they have time? Did they see these two objects on their radar? And what was the communication in real time like between the pilot of the regional jet and the helicopter? Now, while you were speaking, Tom, I know you mentioned that the discussion last year was about adding more long-distance routes. We did hear in a news conference just a short time ago over in Wichita, the airport spokesperson there, where this flight originated from, he did mention that this was a relatively new route. Do we know if this was a route that was perhaps added when that legislation was approved?
This was not. They recently in October they announced which routes would begin service. I'm going to have to check, but I don't believe they've actually begun yet. But the Wichita route was not one of them. The Wichita route started separately from this whole long distance controversy.
Okay, Tom Rousey on the phone for us. Thank you so much for hopping on this breaking news coverage. Our Natalie Spalla is standing by. She's at Dangerfield Park, and our Steve Rudin is joining us. You guys have been out there for quite some time. I know a lot of onlookers as well as additional news crews are out there. Can you tell us, has anything changed? We were showing a helicopter view of that water search. It looks pretty dark behind you, but not far away. That search is still in full swing.
Yes, exactly. And you mentioned the onlookers. I mean, that has not exactly changed. We continue to see people walk in from the parking lot, kind of find their spot along the shoreline here and kind of just take a look at what's going on behind us here along the Potomac. And again, there's not much going on here in terms of no emergency vehicles, no lights, no sirens. That's all behind us on the other side of the Potomac. But Steve,
and what's interesting here is that, on Flight Radar, I'm going to have Marco zoom in on this if he can. This is the U.S. Park Police, and you can see just how many times they've been circling around. And there are 3 choppers that are up there right now. We tracked one earlier that came all the way from Easton, Maryland, and that's on the eastern shore, so it went across the bay, all to show you just how big this search effort is across the area. The winds, we've noticed, starting to pick up just a little bit more, and it is a bit on the breezy side at this point, but it's nothing like we had earlier today. And as Tom Rousey was mentioning, we think of the airports and just how busy they've been. I live in Old Town Alexandria. I work in Roslyn. I travel the GW Parkway day in and day out. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen larger planes abort takeoffs, or abort landings, I should say, where you see them coming in and then all of a sudden they zoom up. And I often see that or hear that over my house in Old Town when all of a sudden they make a hard turn and then accelerate to get back up again. And it happens more often than not. I don't know what the research is on that in terms of, but it's a very busy airport. And like I said, there's 2 main runways for the most part. And the diagonal runway is the one that I believe that this plane was landing in. And then there's, of course, that main runway. But my goodness, what a horrible, horrible event. And of course, for those who have been around here a lot longer, and we were talking about it earlier, we think of the Air Florida flight that was back in the early 80s, and a much different situation where they had a lot of ice and a lot of snow, and that it was over by the 14th Street Bridge, and many of you might remember those pictures from that event. But we can only imagine, and our hearts go out to all the folks who are out there right now and the rescue teams, because I mean, just looking around right now, I'll hand you the mic. I'll just step out over here. Sorry, excuse my back. I mean, there's hundreds of people out here right now that are searching, and you can see that one chopper right up there. For some reason, they've been scanning the area in this right here. I don't know a whole lot, or I'm not an expert on river hydrology, However, low tide is going to happen around 3:15 this morning. High tide again will be at around 8:30, and you can see another chopper, even Marco, off into the background here. Now that's really more over the Old Town Alexandria area. You see those two choppers. I'm going to pull out my flight radar right now. They all have their lights, and it looks like they're looking for something over there, because you can see their searchlights are scanning. And I'm just going to pull this over, and that's actually right on the tip of North Old Town Alexandria. And so I am very curious.
Yeah, well, if you can try to pull that up, we'll try to see where that specific aircraft came from. But just to touch on what you mentioned about the onlookers, and again, you're very close to the area. You live right down in Old Town Alexandria, and you can attest at just how busy this area is in terms of aircraft. And we spent a few minutes speaking with people who had decided to come here and get a look for themselves, and a lot of them close to the area. They didn't see or hear anything, but they saw it spread like wildfire on social media or on the news, on 7 News, and they wanted to come out here and see what it was. But a lot of them did mention to us that it is so busy out here, and they know exactly what it's like.
Yeah, and one thing that we should note also is that, this is a major news event here. And I was walking when I was waiting for you and Marco to come up here. We have news crews, international news crews here, and this is the story that we're going to hear a lot about. And of course, we're going to keep you updated on 7 News.
We'll send
Michelle?
it back to you guys.
All right, thank you both for your coverage. We do want to mention that CNN is reporting that the Black Hawk helicopter that was involved in this collision was on a training mission. And if you've lived in this area for any amount of time, you know it's not unusual to see these trainings happen at all hours of the day and the night as well. So that is just some new information that we are able to say, that this Black Hawk helicopter was on a training mission.